You work 60 hours a week. You show up early, stay late. You say yes when others say no. You follow the rules, hit your deadlines, clean up the messes others leave behind. You sacrifice your time, your energy, sometimes even your health, not because you're weak, but because you believed it mattered, because you believed someone was keeping score, that loyalty meant something, that if you just kept showing up, eventually, someday, it would all pay off. You're honest. You take pride in doing things the right way, not the fast way, not the easy way, but the way you were taught good people do things. You don't complain. You don't cut corners. You show up and carry more than your share. So why are you still stuck? Why is it that while you give your all, someone else, someone who talks a good game, takes shortcuts, plays the politics, rises faster, climbs higher, lives the life you thought you were earning? You start asking yourself, what did I do wrong? But maybe that's the wrong question. Maybe the real question is, what lie have I been told? From childhood we were sold a dream. Work hard, stay humble, do the right thing, and the world will reward you. It's in the fairy tales, the school lessons, the graduation speeches, the idea that success is earned purely through grit and goodness, that if you just grind long enough, the system will notice, recognize, and reward you. But what if that formula is broken? Worse, what if it was never real to begin with? Friedrich Nietzsche, the German philosopher who made it his mission to rip the masks off polite society, once wrote that what we call moral labor, the quiet obedience, the unthanked sacrifice, the self-erasure in service of duty, isn't noble at all. It's not strength. It's spiritual slavery. Let that sink in. Not a path to liberation, but a mechanism of control. Because in a world where power writes the rules, morality is often weaponized to pacify those who don't have any. You're told that being good is enough, that keeping your head down will pay off, that virtue is its own reward. But is it? Look around. Is the world just? Or is it a game? Is life fair? Or is it political, competitive, strategic? Here's the brutal truth. The system doesn't reward hard work. It rewards leverage. It rewards visibility. It rewards those who understand how to own, not just how to serve. And most dangerously of all, it rewards those who understand the lie and know how to exploit those still trapped in it. So ask yourself, why does the nurse working 12-hour shifts earn less than a TikToker flexing fake wealth in a rented mansion? Why does the man building bridges retire in debt, while someone moving numbers on a spreadsheet retires with beachfront property? Is that a glitch in the system, or is that the system? Labor may build the world, but it doesn't own it. And ownership, not effort, is what buys freedom. The truth is, the highest earners, the CEOs, the market makers, the power players, aren't sacrificing their health for their job. They aren't grinding themselves into the ground. They're playing a different game entirely, one built on capital, narrative control, and strategic influence. And that's where the lie turns cruel. You've been taught to glorify your suffering, conditioned to believe that endurance is noble, that self-denial is sacred, that being good means never asking for more. But morality doesn't pay the rent, praise doesn't build equity, and quiet sacrifice doesn't lead to power, it leads to burnout. So again, if moral labor is so valuable, why doesn't it come with leverage? Why are the most essential workers also the most replaceable? Why does the system praise you publicly and exploit you privately? Nietzsche called this slave morality, a belief system not born from strength, but from helplessness. A morality designed by the powerless to cope with their lack of control. It glorifies submission, rewards obedience, and vilifies ambition. Because ambition threatens the structure, and who benefits from that? Not you. The people already in power. So if you're doing everything right and still feel stuck, you're not broken. You're waking up. You're starting to see the architecture of a system that isn't failing. It's functioning exactly as it was designed to. And now comes the real question. If hard work doesn't lead to power, then what does? Courage, strategy, leverage, ownership, the willingness to unlearn what you were taught and rebuild from a new truth. That playing by the old rules won't change the game. That sacrifice isn't a strategy. That morality without power is just another form of control. So stop waiting to be chosen. Stop waiting to be rewarded. Stop waiting for permission. Start learning how the system works. Not to destroy it, but to escape it. Not to become ruthless, but to become free. Because once you see the truth, there's no going back. If this challenged you, shook you a little, or helped you see the cracks in the story you've been sold, like the video and subscribe to Philosphere. This is just the beginning. Real power doesn't wait for permission. It doesn't beg to be noticed. It doesn't rely on validation. It declares its own value. Those who embody what Nietzsche called master morality don't ask if they're good. They define good as whatever enhances their power, their freedom, their ability to build and to lead. To them, strength isn't a threat. It's a virtue. And virtue, it's whatever affirms life, growth, will, and possibility. But then there's slave morality, and it tells a very different story. Slave morality is born from weakness. It emerges not from the powerful, but from those who cannot compete, not directly. So what do? They rewrite the rules. They claim that humility is superior to strength, that obedience is nobler than leadership, that suffering is a sign of moral purity. In this worldview, weakness becomes virtue, not because it truly is, but because it's the only way the powerless can reclaim dignity in a world they don't control. And here's the trap. Once this moral code spreads, it stops being seen as a survival tactic and starts being taught as absolute truth. This is how moral labor came to be glorified. We're told that good people sacrifice, that honorable people serve, that virtue means doing your duty, expecting nothing in return. Sound familiar? We romanticize the worker who never complains, who says yes to everything, who puts others before themselves, even when it costs them everything. But have you ever asked, who does this narrative serve? Who gains from your silence? Nietzsche would say, you're not rewarded for your morality. You're pacified by it. You're praised for being dependable, promoted for being manageable, given just enough, a raise, a title, a plaque, to keep you hopeful, but never enough to make you free. Because while you're chasing fairness, the real rewards, power, ownership, control, stay out of reach. So why does this belief still hold so much power? Why do so many continue to cling to the promise that suffering leads to virtue, that obedience leads to reward? Because the story is beautiful, because it gives meaning to pain, because it helps people endure unfairness without ever confronting it. Slave morality survives not because it's true, but because it's comforting, and comfort is a powerful sedative. But Nietzsche didn't write to comfort. He wrote to awaken, to jolt us into the realization that justice doesn't come to those who wait. It comes to those who create their own terms. So we must ask the harder question, not just why we were taught to suffer quietly, but who benefits when we do. If the system is so obviously rigged, if it rewards control over contribution, why do good people still believe in it? The answer isn't just economic, it's psychological. From the time we're children, we're told the world is fair, that good things happen to good people, that if you just do what's right, life will make sense. Cartoons, stories, school lessons, all echo the same comforting lie. Be honest, be kind, be diligent, and someday you'll be rewarded. But this belief has a name. Psychologists call it the just world fallacy, the illusion that effort equals outcome, that the world must be fair, that if you give, you will receive. It's a beautiful idea, but it's not the truth, and clinging to it, especially in a world built to reward power over principle, isn't just naive, it's dangerous. Because while you're staying late, fixing mistakes you didn't cause, someone else is learning to play the game. While you're saying yes, being polite, taking on extra work, someone else is building alliances, studying leverage, and mastering the system. You're being moral, they're being strategic, and in this world, strategy wins. That's why the engineer who keeps the servers running gets laid off, while the reputation advisor with connections gets promoted. That's why the nurse loses her weekend bonus, but the hospital's PR budget doubles. You were taught to trust the latter. They were taught how to skip steps. And here's where it turns cruel. The system doesn't just fail to reward hard work. It uses your belief in fairness to keep you trapped. Because the longer you wait to be recognized, the easier you are to control. People who believe justice is coming don't question the system. They don't rebel. They keep grinding, waiting, hoping for a someday that never arrives. But this isn't just about income. It's about mindset. If you keep showing up with the wrong map, how will you ever reach the right destination? The rules you were taught weren't made to create powerful people. They were made to create obedient workers. Because the people who taught them, they understood the game. They just needed someone else to keep playing it. So now we arrive at the real question. If the world isn't fair, if virtue doesn't lead to victory, then what does? How do you move forward without becoming ruthless? How do you gain power without losing your soul? The answer isn't to abandon morality. It's to stop worshiping it. Stop treating sacrifice like a strategy. Stop believing good intentions are a plan. In a world shaped by power, understanding power is part of being good. Because once you wake up to the truth, that fairness is a story sold to keep you quiet. Only then can you begin to write your own. Not a story of blind sacrifice, but of conscious strength. Not of obedience, but of ownership. Not waiting for change, but becoming the one who changes. So, what happens once you see the lie? Once you realize that waiting for your virtue to be rewarded is a dead end, you don't throw away your morals. You redefine what strength looks like. This is where many go wrong. They think the only way out is to become cold, heartless, selfish. But Nietzsche wasn't preaching cruelty. He wasn't telling you to abandon integrity. He was telling you stop confusing submission with virtue. His message wasn't to destroy morality, but to transcend the morality of weakness. To become someone who doesn't just follow rules, but writes new ones. Who doesn't beg for meaning, but creates it. Who doesn't wait to be seen, but chooses to matter. In Nietzsche's words, that person is the Übermensch, the overman. Not a tyrant, not a villain, but a fully realized individual. A creator of values. Someone who walks away from systems that no longer serve them, and builds something better in their place. Because the Übermensch doesn't wait to be promoted. He defines his own mission. He doesn't ask to lead, he leads. If this resonated with you, challenged your beliefs, or woke something up inside, hit that like button. Subscribe to Philosphere for more philosophical deep dives that question the systems we live in and the stories we tell ourselves. Because understanding truth is the first step to reclaiming power. The Übermensch isn't enslaved by the system. He understands when to play the game, and when it's time to change the board entirely. He knows that power isn't evil, it's essential. Not power over others, but power over yourself, your path, your purpose, your destiny. You've seen people like this. The entrepreneur who walked away from a stable job to build something bold. The investor who turned rejection into innovation. The builder who stopped waiting for permission and started taking calculated risks. Think of Elon Musk, fired from the very company he helped create, dismissed as reckless, until he built an empire on vision, conviction, and the refusal to be ruled by fear. What separates these people isn't just luck or talent, it's mindset. They didn't wait for the system to validate them. They stopped asking, when will they recognize my worth? And started asking, why did I ever give them that power? That shift from waiting to creating, from submitting to owning, that is the path Nietzsche pointed to. That is what it means to step out of the cage of moral labor. But here's the hard truth. To escape that cage, you have to let go of something deeply familiar. Your attachment to being seen as good. You have to be willing to disappoint the people who benefit from your obedience. To risk standing alone while you build something no one else can see yet. And that takes more than confidence. It takes courage. Because true strength isn't about domination. It's about authorship. It's about writing a life that aligns with your real values, not the values handed to you by a system designed to keep you quiet. This isn't about becoming selfish. It's about becoming sovereign. So ask yourself, what would happen if you stopped waiting to be rewarded and started rewarding yourself with the life you actually want? What would it look like to stop asking for a seat at the table and start building your own? You don't have to become ruthless, but you do have to become responsible for your time, your energy, your power. Because once you realize the system won't save you, the only real move left is this. Stop being a servant of it, and start becoming the author of something greater. So what does action look like after the awakening? After you've stopped waiting, after you've chosen not to abandon morality, but to reclaim your power, what's next? It starts here. Kindness is not weakness, but kindness without consciousness is because morality without awareness, that's not virtue. That's just obedience in disguise. Too often, we confuse being good with being passive. We think saying yes, avoiding conflict, and putting others first makes us virtuous. But that's not strength. That's surrender. Strategic kindness, that's the key. It means knowing when to help, and when to walk away, when to speak, and when to stay silent, when to protect, and when to strike. It means you don't say yes just to be liked. You say yes when it aligns with your mission, with your values, with your truth. Because here's the reality. Not every job deserves your loyalty. Not every leader deserves your trust. Not every opportunity deserves your time. You must become someone who knows when to walk away. When a situation no longer serves your growth, have the strength to leave. Leaving isn't failure. Sometimes it's the beginning of freedom. This is where power enters, not as domination, but as self-definition. The power to say no, the power to build, the power to create systems where you're not just earning, you're owning. Where your energy doesn't just fuel someone else's machine, it fuels a mission that reflects your values. That might mean launching your own business, or building a second income stream, or learning how influence and leverage really work. Not to manipulate, but to defend your vision. It might mean learning to negotiate, to set boundaries, to say, I won't do this anymore, and mean it. These aren't betrayals of morality, they're expressions of maturity. Because here's the truth. If you don't learn how to play the power game, you will always be a pawn in it. But if you do learn, you don't have to lose your soul in the process. Power is not the enemy. Treat it like a tool, not a trophy. Let ethics guide your direction, but let strategy guide your decisions. Nietzsche said it plainly. Power is not evil. It's the will to become more. More than a servant. More than just a good employee. More than a cog in someone else's dream. It's the will to become the author of your own worth. But you can't do that if you treat morality like a cage. You must treat it like a compass, pointing not to approval, but to freedom. So no, don't abandon your principles. Don't become just another cynic chasing status for status' sake. But do learn how the game is played. Do understand leverage. Do recognize when you're being used, and when you're being seen, because the future doesn't belong to the obedient. It belongs to the clear, the conscious, the ones who merge principle with power, empathy with edge. Not the ones who wait for the world to change, but the ones who learn to change the terms of their own existence. If you grew up believing that hard work was enough, that loyalty would be rewarded, that virtue would be recognized, that playing by the rules would make life fair, it's time to wake up. Not because hard work is worthless, but because hard work without power, without ownership, without strategy, will keep you stuck. The real man doesn't just labor. He sees the system, he studies it, and when the rules no longer serve him, he writes new ones. That's the difference between surviving and leading. Between being a cog in someone else's machine, and becoming the architect of your own future. So if you're tired of waiting, if you're done believing that sacrifice is enough, if you're ready to think deeper, act smarter, and live on your own terms, this is where it begins. Subscribe to Philosphere, the channel that doesn't just explain the world, but gives you the tools to reshape your place in it, one idea at a time, one decision at a time.